everyone. So I want you to picture this. A guy walks into a corporate lobby. He's got a badge clipped to his shirt, a laptop bag over his shoulder. He signs in at the front desk, chats with the receptionist a little bit about the weather, and then he heads upstairs. A couple hours later, he walks out with credentials to the entire network. No malware, no 0 days, just a smile, a conversation, and a fake name. That's social engineering. And today, I'm talking to one of the best in the business about how these attacks actually work. I'm Ushi, and this is HackerHaus Security Podcast. So there's a certain kind of person who can call your front desk, talk their way past security, and then straight up walk out of the building with credentials, both legally and getting paid to do so. Our guest today has made a career of exploiting the human element, teaching organizations where their real vulnerabilities are, and he's got the receipts to prove he's one of the best at it. Joe Gray is a 3-time DEF CON OSINT champion, a DerbyCon badge holder, author of Practical Social Engineering, a primer for the ethical hacker, which covers social engineering techniques, OSINT methods, phishing, and defense strategies. Joe has authored OSINT tools, contributed material for major publications, and has been a respected industry speaker for quite some time. And I get the privilege to call you my friend. So Joe,
Absolutely.
Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity to do so. I'm happy to be here.
Do you have anything to update of what I said about you? Did I get that pretty close? I know there was so many things for me to choose from about your background, but so far we're good, right?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up pretty well. The one thing that I would probably add to it is, I would say over the past couple years or so, I have kind of entered the OSINT and threat intelligence era of my career. I've been focusing more on that than the social engineering perspective. There's more of a corporate appetite for it, and it's a target-rich environment. I can go chasing threat actors, I can go chasing traffickers, assist with missing people, do some private investigation type work. It's just a little bit more fruitful.
So, and I actually was going to ask you a little bit about that later on, kind of like that evolution that both like you've gone through, as well as just in general what we've been seeing in the industry. I did kind of want to. I did one thing I wanted to highlight. So, is it, you served in the Navy submarine force? Is that right?
That is
Before you got
correct.
into cybersecurity. Thank you for your service. So can you tell me like how that kind of impacted or influenced you?
At surface level, it has zero impact. But as we all know, nothing is just at the surface level. Initially, it was a foot in the door because I had a top secret clearance, basically. And it afforded me the ability to go off, pass Security Plus, and be a butt in a seat on a government contract. And then basically for career progression, that contractor was like, hey, if anybody can pass this practice test with over a 90 by this date, we will pay for you to take CISSP. Well, wouldn't you know, I was undertasked with things, so I literally sat and took the practice test until I scored a 90 on it, submitted it to get the approval for them to pay for it. And then when they said, okay, we'll pay for it, I was like, oh, I actually have to study now. So I did that and, whatever. Fast forwarding 15 years, realistically, the impacts that there's a lot of crossover there. Especially on the defender side, because my job was navigation electronics technician. Basically, I was a backseat driver. I told the officer of the deck where we needed to turn, and I knew where we were going and roughly what we were doing. Some elements directly go over, like OPSEC, loose lip sync ships. That's something that we had to, it was beat into our heads. So there was that element of it. But now that I've been removed from the situation, and I mean, what I was doing a moment ago when you mentioned the Navy, it's like I was cleaning out a storage unit and I came across these. I mean, it's not a huge metal rack, but this is what I had, and they still smell like the inside of a submarine. And it's like, I hated that smell when I was in, but it's like, refreshing to a degree. It's like the most disgusting, refreshing smell you'll ever be around. But anyway, in hindsight, the big thing that comes from it, honestly, is cross-training. Because, like, for everything on a submarine, you have someone that does something electrical or electronic, and you have someone that does something mechanical. That exists in the engine room with the nukes, that exists up forward with what we call the coners, the cone of the submarine, which would be sonar, fire control, the electronics technicians, the torpedo men, and the machinist mates. So I was frequently embedded with the machinist mates, the auxiliary machinist mates. We called them A-gangers. Basically, they were the heartbeat of the boat. They maintained the diesel, which was used for ventilation and power. They maintained our sanitary systems, which basically would be our poop tanks. They helped with producing oxygen. They helped with scrubbing carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And, oftentimes I had to work with them. Sometimes some of the valves were manual, and they would be the ones to turn it. Sometimes they were like electromechanical or electrohydraulic, and that's where I would come into play. So I made it a point to try to learn their jobs as well, because on a submarine people become preppers very easily. So if there are any bubbleheads listening, that lingo probably sounds very familiar to you. That being said, with submarines, if we're not actively on missions, we are spending time training and drilling. And by drilling, that's working on our emergency preparedness for things like fire, flooding, ruptures of hydraulic plants, and things like that. So submariners make really good preppers because we're already looking for the worst case scenario. Well, how does that translate to, like, security in general? Well, cross-training is invaluable. I've given talks where I've mixed things like wireless pen testing with social engineering with memory forensics. In the social forensication talk I gave a few years ago at the Wild West Hackin' Fest. And, going steps further with that, it's, a lot of people are really good at one particular thing. But when you cross-train, that's also affording you the ability to, and honestly, I should heed my own advice, kind of unemployment-proof yourself. And what I mean by that is if you have multiple skills and you've cross-trained, and, it doesn't have to be like something way off the wall, like print driver, exploit development, and threat intel. Like, it doesn't have to be that far apart, but anytime you have the ability to cross-train and amplify yourself on your resume, you're making yourself stronger. And honestly, I kind of got complacent over the past couple of years and hadn't cross-trained as much. I had dug my heels in on being the best intelligence analyst on the planet that I could be. Not to say that I am the best, because there are people out there far more skilled, far more talented, with access to far better data than I have. But, to that same end, that cross-training is important because it allows you to see concepts from a different lens. A lot of people who do OSINT don't really do security. They don't understand the cyber element of it. They can't script things in Python. Some of them don't even use Linux. The same goes with social engineers. Some social engineers are really good on the phone and really good in person and can't fish their way out of a wet paper bag. But on that same token, you have people who are exceptional at phishing, but you get them on the phone and they are going to panic and crash and burn. So that's kind of the big thing I've taken from submarines with it. And, at the end of the day, I just realized that, sometimes life sucks and you've got to embrace the suck.
Yeah.
But I also don't like to live by the embrace the suck idea either. My new mantra, instead of saying something like that, is I am in my prime.
One of the things I really like that you mentioned, because we did a podcast on InfoSec Whiskey, one of the first ones about like non-traditional paths into like, security. And I love when people have non-traditional paths. I love being able to like showcase that, because my belief is that, like, you called it cross training. I call it like, you like what you said at the end, perception. Like, it's looking at different areas and understanding. The more you understand about the more things, the better you are at problem solving. And everything in security is really just problem solving and figuring out how we, either it's a problem we have or a problem we're going to have, and we need to figure out how to solve that. And there is no one right way. It's not like, oh, you just use this one tool and this one tool fixes that problem. And I think people understanding different places in life, different areas, I think that actually, in my opinion, contributes to a better, more well-rounded employee. Because somebody who's like, who's out there like, okay, I know that I have, and I had to giggle because I was in law enforcement, not military, but I grew up in a military family. And like, one of the big things that I was always told was like, if they offer training, take it. If they offer a certification, get it. Because the more of those things that you get, the more you build up, whatever. And so when you were talking about, listen, I showed up there because I had a security clearance. Those are highly sought after for those listening that don't know it. And that alone is like, sometimes all they need. But definitely a good portion of, what contractors are looking for, because, security clearances are hard and expensive to deal with. But and so saying like, no, I got into it this other little kind of almost like a social engineered way, where you saw the area and burrowed that out. And I think that's so important for people to kind of recognize, because our job market is a hot mess right now. And people need to understand that, like, I think both people hiring as well as those who are looking for jobs, because like, to me personally, if somebody's had like all of the different inputs that you're like, the knowledge and training from all those different areas, that's somebody that I think is going to be able to figure things out when, this stuff really hits the fan. But
yeah, absolutely. And, to your point, thinking through my Rolodex of people I know in industry, one of the most, one of the highest impact forensicators that also does threat intelligence that I can think of had a fully successful career in HR before they transitioned over into InfoSec. Yeah. And, they spent some time in the glass building in Maryland for a while. Another one was a real estate agent and worked in like placing people in jobs before they got into threat intel. Not to mention, like, I don't think I'll get in trouble by saying this, but, prior to her career in social engineering, Rachel Toback worked in UI and UX.
Oh, very cool.
So, there's a lot of people. Our industry is an island of misfits of people who may have had successful careers elsewhere and then managed to carve out a niche or a niche, depending on who you're talking to. I say niche. Some people say niche, but I mean, is it a kid or quiche? But, either way, the point being, everyone's experience is important, because like, I've recently arrived at the conclusion that maybe I should look into SCADA, OT, and ICS security, because, I mean, I live in an area that has a lot of nuclear plants, has a lot of power plants. I've got the understanding of how some of those systems work. Like, granted, we didn't have any computers and PLCs running on a submarine. The new ones do. But the submarine I was on was commissioned before I was even born. Join the Navy, use yesterday's technology tomorrow. But that being said, I understand how power plants work, and I understand the availability and all of that. So it's like, should I make that transition and still keep the threat intel perspective, but, just dig my heels in on ICS, OT, SCADA, that kind of stuff?
Right. I think that is an area that is always going to have especially because we know how the government is, right? Like you just said it, join the Navy and work on yesterday's technology tomorrow. And we know that like our OCS or like all of those types of systems are being run on government funded technology from how long ago, right?
Right.
And so like I think but I like that you brought up, because threat intel, like one of my questions was going to be about kind of how you kind of evolved from like social engineering, OSINT, and then bringing in that like that threat hunting and intelligence in it, because I think that like that's a very what we've seen over the last couple of decades. I think that's like a really cool and apt transition to start pulling in more of that threat intel. And I think of all of the places that need it the most right now, it is like our ICS systems, because that's our infrastructure. Like we don't
Right.
have that, we don't have anything.
I mean, we can flush the toilet, but what will happen? I mean,
Yeah,
if
exactly.
someone shuts down a water plant, we're not going to have the ability to flush a toilet. We're going
Yeah.
to have to walk to our nearest body of water with a bucket of water to be able to put it down into the toilet. And then,
Yeah.
even then, what happens when the sewage plant gets taken out?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's a very uh, it's a very common sense to me type thing. But at the same time, to piggyback off your point, yeah, I mean we're using old technology, and we have to factor in. Okay, having worked in government, having worked in government compliance, um, there is a certain level of assurance that is required. And I think that things should be put through their paces and should be put through the tests and what have you. But I don't think that it should be so arduous and expensive that organizations are more, um, it is cheaper for them to keep Windows XP running and pay an extended service life for it
Mm-hmm.
with MAS 08067 still vulnerable, because it's cheaper for them to accept that risk and accept any penalties or fines
Yep.
uh, rather than to upgrade to Windows 8, 10, 11, or
Yeah.
so on.
It's a
Uh,
cost of doing business to them.
it is. And I mean, that's problematic. But to that end, we also have to factor in that many times, especially when we're talking about government, some people, when they hear government quality, they're like, "Oh man, this is really good." I'm like, "Whoa, this was to the lowest bidder."
Exactly.
So I'm not trying to crap on suppliers for government contracts. I understand the nature of the beast. The government is going to pick more than likely the lowest bidder or something that's nepotist.
Right.
So if you don't have friends in high places, then you do have to bid low, and I get
Yep.
that. And I'm not hating on them for it. It's more of a fundamental flaw of the way that acquisitions, primarily in government, but pretty much everywhere, exist. Um, but that is the world we live in. We can't change everything overnight. We can't boil the ocean, but we can get a pot of water out of that ocean and boil it. And we can affect our own microcosm, and we can affect how we respond to it, and what have you. And in this industry, especially being in it as long as I have, it's really easy to become grumpy and cynical. And I've been there, done that. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've got the t-shirts for that too. But to that same end, in, I've tried to adopt a more positive outlook on things as well. Like, part of it personal improvement, part of it just, what's there to gain from being grumpy all the time?
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you've done with like like the different CTFs that you've done with like National Child Protection Task Force, some of the missing persons organizations that you're involved in, that you use your OSINT abilities to help either locate or find more information to locate missing people. And I swear this is gonna circle back together. And some of those things can be quite heavy emotionally, and I'm curious kind of how you if you've found any way. So like my background is, I was a detective, and I did child exploitation cases, both online and off. And so like, there's a lot of like kind of trauma out there that you're seeing as you're helping. And I'm curious, like, if you have any kind of mental health tricks that you use there, or finding you could have used in places, because it kind of comes back into what you were talking about before with that, just self-improvement and whatnot.
Compartmentalization to a degree, which we know that long term that is not healthy.
Yeah.
But
I laugh because I'm realizing this. That's the phase of life I've been going through the last few years. So
oh yeah,
compartmentalization. It works for a while, and then it breaks, and the dam is not always as easy to shore back up.
That's correct. So a few different avenues, like compartmentalization to a degree, and choosing the time to cope with it, as opposed to just letting it bottle up. Don't suppress your emotions, just, compartmentalize for the time being. Doing events with NCPTF, Trace Labs, and other organizations, I saw some stuff. It wasn't the worst stuff that I saw, and I'll mention that organization in a moment. But, like, especially like looking for missing teens and missing kids, it's like they left because they were in a bad environment to begin with. But in those competitions, it's also not your job to determine why they went missing. It is your job to collect intelligence.
Right.
So, it's like, man, like sometimes you would just see stuff and it's not going to hit everybody the same. And that's the beauty of, like, with the Trace Labs events, you're on teams of up to 4. I only competed solo one time, and that was in the event with the National Child Protection Task Force. I started an hour late as a solo competitor on a whim, and I still got 3rd place.
That's awesome.
But that being said, having a team, everybody has different triggers. Everybody has different experiences. So, communicating with my team and saying, hey, can someone else take this on, and passing it off, that was a good technique. And then, I would be upfront. I would have, like, borderline a mandatory team meeting before we had the events. And I would say, hey, if you need to step away for a while, just tell us and step away. And then when you're back, let us know you're back. No big deal. If you, like, there's been times in events that I've seen something that I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk. And I literally just lock my screen, walk out my office, walk out the front door, and just go for a walk or two around my subdivision and call it good. Clear my head. Sometimes I may throw the AirPods in and listen to some music. Sometimes I might just be alone with my thoughts, and so on. So to that particular end, it's just a matter of what works for you. And to that end as well, we see this a lot, and I've largely stepped away from it. But like whenever I was going to, several conferences a year, pre-COVID, I was speaking at 25 to 50 a year. Like, I spent more time on the road than I did at home, it seems.
Right.
But, you kind of get sucked into that scene, and InfoSec becomes your entire hobby, your entire identity. And it's like, if you're not actively working, you're actively researching something or building a lab or doing this or doing that or on this Discord or this Slack or this whatever. And, that's good. It's good to have community with people. But at the same time, what I learned later on was that's not very healthy.
Right.
It's cool to make friends in industry, but at the same time, you need friends that don't do what you do. You need hobbies that don't involve a keyboard. And, this may be controversial to some people because I know some people's perspective on what I'm about to mention. That's the beauty of the world we live in right now. We have the freedom of choice. And, I think one of my saving graces has been getting involved with firearms and competitive shooting. I don't shoot with I'm not like training for anything in particular aside from shooting faster and missing faster, but there's something cathartic about going and just dumping a magazine on some paper targets and hearing the steel ring, or, having to get in those awkward positions, shooting your AR from your weak hand or something like that.
Yes.
It's a different type of challenge. And also it requires a certain level of fitness. I mean, before we started recording, we were talking about my weight loss, and I was talking about I was trying to actually gain weight. That's part of the reason. I mean, I want to pack on more weight so that I can command better control of my firearms, and so that if I do an event that has a more fitness oriented thing, because there's one, Deviant Olim's good buddies with the people who organize it. And it's the brutality match. They only run a few a year, but one of the stages from their event in Finland last year was you had to drag a 150-pound dummy out of the danger zone, which there was no operational forces. There was no fire coming your way, but you still had to drag a 150-pound dummy. And when you got it there, its legs started squirting blood, and you had to put fake blood, and you had to put a tourniquet on. And this was all on the clock. After you did that, then you had to go back to your firearm and engage targets again.
And I think people, like, I can imagine there's probably two types of people who will hear these stories, and the response is either, oh my God, or like, oh, that's so cool. And I think that people forget, like, that number one, I love shooting, right? Like, and I think people forget that number one, it's a skill, and it's no different, like in the like bow and arrow shooting. There are people who do just competitions for that. Could you use a bow and arrow in a way, and in a malicious way? Obviously. And so I think, like, people forget about just, like, kind of that aspect of things, and that it is, like, a really cool competition. I've been to some of those competitions where, drag the dummy or drag the person, and I've been to some of them, and some of the competitions are, like, not combat realistic at all. It's, go over here to these targets. It's almost like the speed shooting stuff is the things I think is so wicked cool to watch. And it's skill. It is you engaging a different portion of your brain to make that, to get your goal done. And I think, like, that's what people forget about. Like, when I was in the academy, I actually came in second in our shooting contest. The first place guy was a sniper in the Army, so I let that one slide. But I loved shooting the balloons. We would go around the different things, and we would shoot at the balloons. And like you mentioned, the metal ping, that is immediate feedback, a little dopamine hit.
You hear that,
like
ding,
ding, ding. You're like, hell, because I can't see it. Like, I can't see the bullet hit the thing. I'm too blind for that. I need that, and that feedback gives me exactly what I need. But exactly. So I like what you're saying is have that hobby.
At my mom's house, she's got some acreage. I've got bowling pins that I tie up to a shepherd's hook. I've got a helium tank that I will blow up balloons, and I only do it on kind of windy days. Like, if it's really gusty or too calm, no. And I'll just try shots. Like, I'm not doing like trick shots. Like, I'm not throwing an apple up and trying to hit it 3 times before it hits the ground.
Right.
Because, I mean, with the calibers I use, if I hit the apple, there's not going to be any apple left.
You have applesauce.
At best. I mean, it's going to be the equivalent of birds eating apples and flying over and pooping the seeds out. You're going to have a bunch, in 20 years, you're going to have a bunch of apple trees.
Right.
But, like, the stuff I do, it is more of the defensive realism type things, like scenarios like, you went to return a Christmas present, and this gang decided they were going to take your money and your life. Defend yourself. And that was legitimately, like, one of the hokey scenarios that was provided in the last competition I did. Is that preparing me for protecting my house and, those around me? No, it's not. But what it is it's giving me cycles with the firearm. It's making me focus on something that is not my career. And, if somebody breaks in my house in the middle of the night, yeah, I'm probably going to be holding the gun super shaky. But you know what? I'm used to shooting from uncomfortable situations in semi-stressful situations, and I'm going to be able to handle it better than I would have otherwise.
Right.
And if my equipment malfunctions, I am comfortable in working through that. Like, I don't have to sit and think about it. It's second nature now.
Yeah.
And, before anyone's like, oh, well, bad about guns, well, you're free to not really like firearms and what have you.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anyone about the measures that I go to ensure the safety of my firearms, considering there are children in my house. I have all of my ammo outside the safe in ammo cans that are padlocked, and all firearms stay in the safe unloaded at all times unless I'm taking them somewhere, and then they still stay unloaded. I have things that I can rapidly gain access to, but I have them in such a way that only I can gain access to them. So if something goes bump in the night, I can address it, but it's not like, if my kid has friends over, it's not like they can be playing
There's
with
no
it.
access to it. Yeah. And I think, because people have to remember that there are all kinds of different hobbies. There are all different types of training that people do, whether it is, some type of martial arts or some type of anything really, right? And some of those things can be dangerous. And you plan accordingly. We all have really dangerous items in our house, so like it's no different than a chef who has a crap ton of knives. I think sticking my hand in a bag of knives, I would probably be more apt to injure myself than I would, dealing with somebody's firearm. But and I mean, most people, I think, like, especially people that do those kinds of that type of hobby. I I always think those are the best people to have guns because those are people who are very gun safety forward. I've
we're
never
very
been.
we're very retentive about it because
Yep.
I mean, just to give a quick anecdote, where I live, from about Halloween till New Year's is turkey shoot season, and I'm not saying like going turkey hunting. I'm meaning like going and paying $4 per shotgun shell to shoot a shotgun at a target, and whoever gets closest to the center wins whatever. It may
Oh,
be a
that's
frozen
fun.
turkey, it may be cheese, maybe bacon, maybe a gift card, things like that. But, going from like the competitive shooting, like action pistol, three gun type thing to turkey shoots, the number of times I had a barrel pointed at me and I about lost my mind on these people because I'm also a USCCA instructor. So the
Yes.
number of times that I had a barrel or something pointed at me that made me feel unsafe uh, significantly outweighed the number of times I felt unsafe during a match.
Yeah.
And honestly, the people who curate the hobby and work on it, and I mean, I don't shoot. Having been unemployed for the last 3 months, I've only shot 2 or 3 times in that time frame. With a little help from my friends. Get the text or the phone call. Hey, let's
Yeah.
go pop some rounds, or something like that. But what I've observed, the people that concern me more are the people who have it and never train, and the people who only use. They're like, I only use this for hunting or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with only using your firearm for hunting. I'm not saying you need to go and you know to counteract what my great uncle said when I invited him to the range with me once. Why would I want to go and waste my ammunition shooting at a target that ain't moving and ain't gonna fit in my deep freeze?
Right.
And I mean, I understand that, but it is a diminishing skill, and
Yeah.
that's where complacency comes in. It's like as a kid, I remember the shotgun in the house being on a rack over my grandparents' bed. Um, I never tried to get to it, but I could have if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Um, just like the glass gun cases, things like that, and that tends to come more from the not so much the hunting crowd, but different crowds with different ideologies. And I'm retentive about safety. I mean,
Yeah.
my
You
oldest
have
kid
to
has
be.
a bolt action 22 and um, rattles off safety rules. When my kid goes with me to the matches, rattles off the safety rules to the other competitors.
Nice. That's awesome. I love that. Do you have any other hobbies that you engage in?
I've been reading a bit lately, but that's about it.
Yeah.
I had to step away from reading dystopia just because it was becoming too much of nonfiction.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. All right. So I did want to like kind of just mention and ask you a little bit about your your OSINT tools that you created. Can you like just tell us a little bit about like what each one of those does?
Sure. So, unfortunately, Decepticon is more or less dead and gone. Well,
What did it do?
thanks to Space Karen for monetizing the Twitter API, and it is Twitter. I will dead name it. Monetizing that API, there is no free tier anymore, so
Gotcha.
there's really no way for it to work. I had plans to rewrite elements of it and then also rewrite it for a bot detection capability, but life happens. WikiLeaker basically came because there was this tool called Datasploit, and it operated a lot like Metasploit. It was written by Shubham Mittal, so if anyone who's been to the Recon Village at DEF CON, Shubham is one of the organizers. And it was written in Python 2. Well, when Python 3 came around, Shubham and his team's priorities shifted, and as a byproduct, the tool fell by the wayside. So I got his blessing to rewrite a particular module from it, which was what checked WikiLeaks. So basically what it does is you can put in a search parameter and it will search WikiLeaks for inclusion of that domain. Now,
Nice.
I mean, someone savvy with Python could use that for several other things that don't involve WikiLeaks or don't involve a domain, but, that's creative expression.
Other things.
Lately, like within the last month, I discovered that there's a way to find someone's LinkedIn born on date from the source code of their LinkedIn account.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, I mean, do you want to test it? We can test it right now. It's very easy.
Sure, let's do it.
All right. So here's what I need you to do.
All right.
I need you to go to your LinkedIn, look at your data, and I need you to find what day you owned LinkedIn.
All right. Do you happen to know where I find that data? Click on me. Let's see.
Let me get my source code listed, and then I will get it for you. To do so, go to Settings and Privacy and Data Privacy.
Data privacy. Okay.
How LinkedIn uses your data.
Yep.
Manage your data and activity. Scroll to the very last page of your activity, and it'll be your join LinkedIn date.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I got it.
Okay, and I'm going to tell you what it is here in just a moment. I've not written a tool to do this, so that's why I'm having to go the more manual route. And I'm going to have to do a quick little conversion here, but that'll be easy enough because it's going to be an epoch time. Nope, that is not correct there. So let me look for the next one. This one looks correct.
They got like everything logged on here.
Oh, of course they do.
Your profile was shared. Your like all of that stuff.
You created your account, GMT. You created your account Wednesday, April 6, 2016 at 11:39 a.m.
So it doesn't give me the time, but it does give me the date, and it is April 6, 2016.
Yep. So to do it, the way it works is you view the source of the page and you look for the word created. When you do that, that brings it down to, in the case of, because we are connected on LinkedIn, there are 9, and usually it's the 3rd or 4th one up. In your case, it was the 4th one up.
Now, if you're not connected, will you still be able to see? Does it?
You absolutely can.
Yeah.
Because whenever I was posting about, hey, I'm looking for work, and I used hashtag open to work, I got smashed by a bunch of fake recruiters in my inbox, and one of them almost got me. He almost got me. But then the way he started phrasing things and the way he was reiterating questions while claiming to be a recruiter at Amazon, I was like, not today, Satan.
Yeah.
And I started questioning him.
I wanted to find out more. Go ahead, tell me. So you started questioning him?
I questioned him, and then I found myself blocked. So I was like, thanks for confirming my hypotheses. And then I started looking through my connection requests, and I noticed all of these people, like, they had, like, okay, one image, but I noticed they all had a single post that just said hashtag open to work. And I was like, this is a TTP. Let's look a little bit further. So then I was like, when were these accounts created? So then that led me to go committing the Missouri felony of pressing F12 and viewing the page source. And I started looking through the created date. If you're connected with someone, you can find out the day you connected. That's one of the other created dates. But nevertheless, I was digging through and I see these created dates, and they're all in Unix time or epoch time, whatever you want to call it. So I just pulled up a converter and was like, boom, boom, and they were all created within the last 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
And then I was like, well, let's OSINT the planet some more. So I started reverse image searching some of the images, and they were coming from, one was like a concrete executive in Oregon, and then the other was a still from a Russian language YouTube video.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, I even went as far as to like use ChatGPT to create what I called honey posts. And I put one hashtag in each. So my initial post that got all the traction, that got these people like trying to connect with me, had 7 hashtags. So I split each of the 7 up. I told ChatGPT exactly what to do. Fought with ChatGPT a little bit. Everyone has that acrimonious relationship. Well, yes. I get the post, I post them, and within an hour, 6 of them have between like 5 and 30 views each, and hashtag open to work has 75.
Wow.
So I was like, this is where it's coming from.
That's interesting. So are you I remember you discussing this on LinkedIn. Have you done like a blog, or are you going to do anything?
The report is available via my LinkedIn.
Oh, perfect.
I posted the report in PDF format on LinkedIn.
Oh, perfect. Awesome.
I figured, what? I'm unemployed, and, if someone wants to get a bite out of what they could expect with working with me, hey, here you go.
Awesome. So I have one more question, and, sort of two. What would you say right now is like your favorite OSINT tool? Both, it can be something and I also want to know, what do you think is like an underutilized, publicly available, either OSINT tool or skill that is underutilized or underappreciated?
The answer is the same to both.
Okay.
And that is web browser. That is the most
Google.
non-answered answer. Actually, I wouldn't even say Google, because the number of times I've done investigations, and like Google, I mean, anybody working in OSINT or threat intelligence, yes, you have to be good with Google. You have to know your dorks. You have to be able to chain those together. You needed the site in title, file type this that contains this with, to find those scenario, like those instances. But there's a lot of value in using Bing, in using Yandex, especially if you're looking at, I don't know, like APT29 or those types of groups,
right?
The Pajoustas of the world, give them some spasiba. But to that end, understanding which search engines would be likely to be used by whatever it is you're looking for is very important. Chaining your dorks together. Username tools like What's My Name, Sherlock, Migrate, etc. Those are very powerful. But you can also do those. If you want to do it more passively, you can basically do in URL or in text via Google. You're not going to find as much because you are not actively interrogating the platforms. So honestly, that would probably be my favorites. Gotcha. There are a lot of like super technical ways I could go about it. Like Spiderfoot's a good tool. Recon NG is a good tool. There are so many tools out there. Like Ghunt's good. But I've learned the hard way see, what's on my shirt. I have learned the hard way not to rely too heavily on a tool. I focus more so on TTPs, workflows, and processes, because the tools can come and go. But if you know what to do, if you know where to get the data and what to do with the data once you get it, you can weather the storm regardless of any tool. I mean, this has happened at conferences. People are like, well, you can't find anything on me. And it's like, bet. And
Right.
I just pull out my phone and I'm like, so tell me about, and I won't say anything overt. I'll say something that they will know that I've seen it,
Right.
but it's nothing that's going to incriminate or embarrass them too much. But I mean, the fact that I can do it in a matter of minutes on my phone should tell you everything you need to know. Because for me, my philosophy as an OSINT analyst, an OSINT trainer, and an aficionado is, it's not so much your tooling. Yeah, your tooling matters, but the tooling that you use, that you are able to make use of, is more important than having all the tools in the world. I think the mindset and the ability to, do some reaches without dislocating your shoulder, some of those off the wall hypotheses, I think that's very important. And, that's one of those things. Like, I've not done training, like I've not given training publicly in about a year or more. My previous employer didn't allow it. So, shameless plug, I do have some courses scheduled. See my LinkedIn for the schedule. But in my classes, I try not to focus on a particular tool. I might say, this is what you do with this data. This is, the point A to point B. As of right now, this tool can help you get there. But
Right. Tools change every day.
I mean, presidents are temporary. Wu-Tang is forever. I mean, tools are temporary. OSINT is forever, or at least screenshots are.
Would you agree that it's more about kind of your investigative approach and that critical thinking aspect than it is
100%.
really what tool you're using? So, like, if somebody wanted to get into OSINT right now, I always feel like for me, I learn best hands on keyboard, figuring it out, and just kind of like, bull rushing my way through things. I've done some of the Trace Lab CTFs, and I enjoyed those. I think, what would you say for people who wanted to get into it? Besides, like, I definitely agree. I think like understanding Google dorking and how that works is super helpful. But like, if somebody's brand new, just starting, wanting to get into it, how would you suggest that they started that?
Well, they've probably already been doing OSINT. They just didn't realize it was OSINT. They didn't know that's what it's
Right.
called. I mean, they've been
Right.
snooping on people on social media or looking
Yep.
up phone numbers from their missed call log or whatever. Um, there's a lot of stuff to read on the internet. There's a lot of really good stuff, and there's some not so good stuff to read as well. And when I say not so good, I'm not meaning like case studies. I'm talking about bad hot takes,
Gotcha. Yep.
or just bad advice in general. That being said, I mean, we have to acknowledge the OG of OSINT. So someone that's trying to get into OSINT should go to Amazon and purchase Open Source Intelligence Techniques by Michael Basil, whatever the most current edition is. You should read it cover to cover. You may not use every single technique. You should understand where it comes from, because everybody that does OSINT because that guy pioneered the art.
Yeah.
The acronym was defined, but it did not pick up and take off until those books came out and people in our industry started realizing, hey, this is good. Reading Extreme Privacy could be of benefit, especially if you're dealing with like SOC accounts and maintaining your identity. I've not read that one cover to cover. I've read a significant chunk of it, and I've skimmed the rest because some of it's just not applicable to me and my threat model.
Right.
Shameless plug, you could read Practical Social Engineering as well, but also start by doing. Volunteer for things like the Trace Labs events. Those are good.
And they're pretty often, so it's not like people wouldn't have the,
I think the next event is February 21st, if I recall correctly. I'm not a staffer or even a volunteer with them until they need me to volunteer. So I'm not a permanent volunteer. So I think it is February 21st. Don't quote me verbatim on that. Do those types of events. If you go to conferences and they have like a Recon Village, an OSINT Village, an Intel Village, go find the Village Idiot. I mean, I have to make that joke because, Ginsburg and I ran an intelligence village at B-Sides KC a few years ago, and I anointed myself the Village Idiot. So I'm not hating on the volunteers that run villages. And in fact, I significantly appreciate them. But, look into things like that. Go into things like Try Hack Me and look at some of their OSINT challenges. Sinwindy, which is one of my frequent collaborators in Trace Labs events, runs OSINT Dojo, which is good. Another book about OSINT to read would be Ray Baker's OSINT Deep Dive. Quite frankly, Ray Baker terrifies me in all the best possible ways when it comes to OSINT. If you want to get more into the social engineering side, then, of course, read Practical Social Engineering again, buy another copy to read it again, make one your OSINT copy and one your social engineering copy.
One's for the bathroom, one's for the bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, have one for the coffee table, one for the bathroom, one for your office.
Yeah.
And then make sure that if you get into management, get a third copy. No, I'm purely kidding here. One copy will suffice.
Well, no, then you have to get a copy for all of your team.
That's true. But if you want to understand social engineering, Dr. Robert Cialdini's Influence the Psychology of Persuasion is a seminal work with that. And then the person who I like to read for that kind of stuff, who I consider a friend, would be Jenny Radcliffe, because she is terrifying. But she's also terrified of spiders. So if you don't want her to be able to reach the perimeter of your organization, just get a moat of spiders.
A moat. That's so funny.
But I realized that you had asked a question earlier that I never really truly answered, and I kind of want to circle back to it because it actually, it's a powerful one of, how did I make the transition from social engineering to OSINT to threat intel? So if listeners and viewers of this podcast have learned anything by now, I'm a talker. I was on a call with Bill Pollock, the founder of No Starch. We were discussing parts of practical social engineering, and I just went on a word wall. Brrr, and Bill's like, stop. He stopped me, and I was like, I apologize. He's like, there's no need to apologize. You are a social engineer. You derive your power from your ability to talk.
That's awesome.
Couple that with me being from the South, I'm a storyteller. So social engineering came very easy for me because I'm able to talk. I've never met a stranger. Having done the public speaking, I don't really get shy about things for the most part. And, I just understand it. After doing some social engineering before the DerbyCon SECTF that I ended up getting a black badge for, I learned that better OSINT made better social engineering. Basically, what it boils down to is it afforded me the ability to have more insight into things that I could pre-lead questions better. I could build better pretexts. I could speak to things in an area a little bit better. Like during the DerbyCon SECTF, I was targeting a company based in Louisville. I started referencing craft brews from Louisville. I didn't touch a single one of them, but I told them I had a cooler full of it in my garage. So, things like that. And that's something I learned exclusively from OSINT. And then, OSINT for social engineering is very hyper-focused. Then I looked into OSINT for missing people, OSINT for this, OSINT for that. And then having already worked in InfoSec, having done some incident response type stuff, having done some defensive security here and there, it's like, well, why don't I... Number one, I kind of transitioned from social engineering to OSINT because, I like the idea of OSINT more than social engineering. With social engineers, there's a lot of bravado, and sometimes it becomes exhausting. Just being entirely honest, when you get a bunch of social engineers in the room together and you've got the one-upsmanship going on, or the one-up person's ship going on, and it's nothing against people. It's just the way that people who are good at social engineering are wired.
They're social engineers.
At times I would just be sitting there like, should I do it? Should I do it? Should I do it? because there was a guy in the Navy who had to one up everything. And on deployment, I got so tired of hearing it, I started doing the one downer. So he's like, yeah, well, when we get back from this deployment, I'm going to go and leave. I'm going to go to Texas, and I'm going to hop in my 4-wheel drive truck. And about that time, I cut him off. And I always started him the same way. I was like, yeah? And that was always the cue to people who were in the know. I was about to drop something. I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to go to Rhode Island, and I'm going to drive my 3-wheel drive truck. And, just whatever. And it would just be the most absurd things. But, I almost wanted to, like, there would be times I would be just sitting lobby conning and hearing some of this, and I'm just like, oh, yeah? Well, one time I stuck a compressed air can underneath the door to get the automatic door to come open. And wouldn't you know, it opened, and I stubbed my toe. I would just want to do that just to upset the conversation, but I didn't. And sometimes it can be exhausting. And honestly, with social engineering, it's very niche. And if you're not working at like a pen testing firm, or you're not, if you don't have a lot of pull, almost to the point of maybe almost a cult of personality, it's hard to find, work doing social engineering full time. And because I'm not like a full-time pen tester with like OSCP and like exploit dev chops, that's not really my thing. But, the nosiness, now that I've got that down pat to a science. So, between that and also transitioning into a role where we were developing an OSINT tool that ended up having getting a patent. I like
you have a patent. That's super cool.
I have it, but I can't use it. I sold it for $1. But to that end, the OSINT world, the intelligence world, and I'm not using the term community because I don't want to combine this with the U.S. intelligence community like NSA, CIA, DIA, FBI, right, etc. But the world of people who do OSINT and intelligence are typically a lot more welcoming, and you don't really hear as much bravado. It's more of like facts or shut up. I mean, to quote another No Starch author in his book title, POC or GTFO.
Right.
I mean, in OSINT and intelligence, you're typically only as good as your last report, as opposed to whatever story you told that you probably shouldn't have, that you've probably violated an NDA by telling. Or I'll take things that didn't happen for 500, Alex. So, I embraced that world, and I was like, you know what? I wish I'd known that I liked OSINT better than social engineering when I created my Twitter handle, because I would have totally have been JoeSint as opposed to C3P Joe.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, I do have it. I do have
C3P Joe is still pretty cool though.
It is, and I do have the JoeSint handle, but C3 just had the followers, so I just left it in place.
Yeah. And
now it's like I almost never go there now. I've been on there more in the last month than I had the last 2 years.
Same, actually.
So, but then the transition to threat intel, because I've worked in incident response, I've worked in security engineering, I've, done some SOC type stuff. I understand the cybers. Like I've got my GCIH, my GSNA. I've taken the courses for GCFE and GCFA, but I never took the tests. Bummer. I really wish I had, but hindsight's always 2020.
Yeah.
I understand how those things work and how to go about that. So why not marry that with the OSINT techniques and, take some of those forensic artifacts and like be able to explain them, be able to deconstruct them, because I did say I was not very much on the offensive side, but I know enough of the offensive side to be dangerous enough. I know enough of the offensive side that I can take defensive artifacts and figure out what can be done with them offensively.
Right.
So taking those things and then building it back together, and instead of just saying, hey, here's a list of IOCs, there are no IOCs in OSINT. When you're looking for missing people, there are no IOCs.
Right.
It is, these are the TTPs. This is what this person is doing. This is where this person was seen. That's as close to IOCs as you're going to get. So applying that concept to threat intel and focusing more on TTPs and observables more so than the IOCs, I think is very powerful.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Well,
that's just how the transition worked.
yeah.
It
You
was
know,
guided somewhat by the market.
I feel like, but honestly, I feel like that is the most intelligent way to, you know, focus your transitions. You know, as you got to pick whatever is working. We were just talking yesterday at a meeting about throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks. And I think people who are successful long term in different careers, they have to be able to kind of move and flow with things.
I mean,
Um,
look at it this way, right? Um, Consider professional wrestling, right? The name Chris Jericho. That dude has been
yeah,
around since the early 90s. I remember when he debuted in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and it was only on, broadcast to the local market. That dude is still going at it. But
it's
the reason
insane.
he's somewhat successful is because, number one, he has a band. So he plays with Fozzy and takes time off. He works smarter with his body. He doesn't beat himself up as bad as he used to, and he's able to reinvent himself as various characters over time. And that's important to do in industry. And that kind of goes back to that whole beginning of cross training.
Yeah.
To one degree, I let the market define what I'm doing. But at the other end, I acknowledge what my interests and my hobbies and my capabilities and capacities are. And, if it's something that I can work to upskill myself with, I will. I'll cross train it or just level up as I need to. But it's one of those things that I've been having career conversations about being an AI prompt engineer for things dealing with pen testing and threat intel, and that's something.
Interesting.
I mean, I never thought that I would be in a position where I'd be having conversations about getting paid for arguing with Chat GPT.
Yeah.
But that's where the market's going, and I can still leverage my experience, my knowledge, and it's something that interests me to the point to where I can be powerful for someone with it.
So where do you kind of see, or where do you want to explore this next chapter that you're going into? So
Yes.
for those who aren't aware, you are open to opportunities, and according to your LinkedIn, both full time as well as like some project engagement. So like this, plug yourself for me. Tell me, what are you looking at doing? What do you want to get into? Who should be reaching out to you right now?
Everyone should be reaching out. But
Agreed.
no. Officially, what I'm for full time work, I'm looking for like a senior threat intel position, primarily remotely. I'm not in a position to relocate. Um, Senior threat intel lead. I can do some short term contracts, some part time work, 1099 type stuff. If you want me to come in and audit your threat intel or OSINT processes, procedures, and the workflow, because I take a contrarian opinion to threat intel. I like to look at it from the to be outcome driven. I want to understand. I would prefer to define like PIRs and have the conversations with the customers, internal or external customers, to understand what they need, so that we can build the intel program that they need. Not like, I'm not in the business of telling people this is the intel you need. I'm in the business of people telling me this is what I need, and then me engineering a way to provide it to them. So, if you want me to take a look at your programs, I can do that. You got some stuff you want to investigate. You've got some OSINT you need done. I can do that. You think you've got malicious insiders or like fake IT contractors? I've done some work with that. Um, of course, training is always on the table. I can do private in-house training and never mention it, or I can open it to the public as well. Either or. Um, but yeah, and
Awesome.
threat intel, OSINT. I mean, if you want somebody to fish your employees, I mean, I've not forgotten how. I mean, I can fish them as well, or anything along those lines.
Where can
I'm
they where
open.
can they contact you at? What's the best
Probably
place to
LinkedIn
talk?
is probably the easiest right now. I've
Okay.
transitioned from all the other social media platforms to kind of using LinkedIn as my crutch right now. So I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. It'll be, if you're not connected with me, I'm Eyeballs Joe G. And then after you connect, I become Eyeballs Joe Gray. You'll see a statement in my profile about Tiananmen Square. so that I'm blocked by the Great Firewall in China that cut down on a lot of spam, to be honest.
Oh, nice.
But the URL on my LinkedIn is Joe Gray InfoSec. It's easy to find that way as well. That's probably the easiest way that's guaranteed to get my attention the quickest.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us and talking. I honestly didn't even get to half my questions. I would love if you are, if you, well, yeah, I honestly was going to ask you if we could maybe even do another podcast. I have enough questions. I could fill a whole OSINT podcast. Would that be something that you'd be into talking more about in the future?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I'll have Eddie reach out and figure that out. Well, thank you. It was so much fun to get to chat. I think the last time I saw you was at DEF CON a couple years back. And so I hope that the next opportunity is just as fun as all the rest. But thank you so much. And I don't know how to end these things. So bye, everyone.
Das Vidania.